Nerd alert, dork face.
I am not a loser. I just have a bad haircut.
Kind of a major dork.
Oh, nerds.
If you're into science, tech, or unique hobbies, you're listening to the right show. On Get Nerdy With It, we interview nerds talking about their passions. This is Get Nerdy With It.
Welcome to Get Nerdy With It. This is episode number 7 on July 3rd, 2013. That's right, it's the eve of the 4th of July, and we have a great show planned for you. But I want to introduce first, we have a new show co-host that is starting tonight, Christopher Rizzo. He's not new to podcasting, but new to the show. Hey, Christopher.
How are you doing tonight?
I am super. How are you?
I'm great. Glad to be here.
I'm so glad that you're here because I just got to tell everyone that it was Christopher that came up with the show name, actually. And what we were talking about something. I don't even remember what it was. Do you recall?
I don't remember either. And I don't even remember saying it. You say that I said it, and I'm just going along with it.
You
okay,
said
yeah.
it. You're just like, yeah, I like to get nerdy with it, and da, 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 da. And I forgot what you said. All I know is get nerdy with it stood out, and I was like, that would be like an awesome name for a show. So, that night I registered the domain, and so here you are. So you're back where you need to be. You're home. So welcome home.
Oh, glad to be here.
And we have a special guest tonight. I thought that due to tomorrow being the 4th of July, that it would be pretty awesome to talk about the United States and be patriotic and have someone that knows quite a bit about purchasing and shopping for USA-made items, made in the USA branded items. And that gentleman is John Alley. John, welcome to Get Nerdy With It. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm excited about this. It's going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. And just talking with you before the show, there's a lot that I do not know about made in the USA. And so it seems like you are a wealth of knowledge, and we're really lucky to have you on the show. So thanks for being on.
Definitely a made in USA nerd. So
You are. I know you are.
The right place.
So how long have you been supporting made in the USA items?
Well, it's kind of interesting how I got into it. When I just sort of, as long as I can remember, I was one of these people that would take things apart, put things together. So I was always just sort of fascinated with how things were made when I was a kid. But when I really got into this concept, I was in college, and I always liked music. So I was into music, and I was trying to find a good sounding, good stereo system I could listen to my music with, and I was reading magazines, and there was a magazine out then called High Fidelity, and they would label where everything they were reviewing was made, and everybody at the time, this was in the 80s, and everybody was like, everything's made Japan, and I don't remember if you remember the movie Back to the Future, but in like the second one, he goes back to the 50s, and Doc Brown's like, oh, here's the problem. This chip says made in Japan. And Michael J. Fox says, all the good stuff's made there. So. But anyway, so it kind of coincided with that. And I was like, well, really, most of the good stuff's actually made here. So, and I was studying business and economics and looking on a macro and a micro side of it. I kind of came to realize that as things were starting to go offshore, there was going to be a problem because we have such a huge country with so many people, so much population, that this idea that was trendy there that we were going to become a service society, a service economy, the math didn't work for me. Right? How many people can work in fast food and all this and so forth and so on, or call centers? And again, at the time, the internet was a baby. So you didn't have call centers in India and, Mexico and China, Philippines, et cetera. You didn't have Skype, things like that. So that's sort of what got me started. And I could go on and on from there, but if you want to redirect me to something more specific, we could go for hours on this. But that's kind of what kick-started it.
Yeah.
And it's all from there. And as far as, I will say this before we go on, at that time it was more about reading. I did do some reports and stuff for classes and so forth. But it wasn't really until you had good browsers where we could do bookmarking. Like in the mid to late 90s, they really started collecting bookmarks of companies, and I have 4, 5, 6,000 bookmarks, and I'd say about 95% of them are probably good. There's so many of them.
Wait,
and
how many bookmarks do you have?
Probably 4,000 or 5,000.
Wow.
Now, I mean, that's not all going to be available for the public, but for myself, I need to actually get it all organized and stuff. I have a blog of sorts I've had for a while that has some of those. Mm-hmm. But anyways, so that's how I got started.
What percentage of items in our household, like on the average American household, would you say the products are made in the USA? Maybe, like
it really kind of depends on. There's a lot of factors involved in that. Accidentally, someone could easily have, say, 40 to 60% of their items that would be made here without realizing it. But then again, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just thinking. So in my house, I have, I have a lot of tech for one thing because I am a nerd, right? So really, literally, I have a lot of tech. But
so you have less than someone that had less tech generally.
An average consumer? Yeah, so, books and your tables, your furniture.
So a lot of those are made here.
Yeah.
And especially, it depends on when you bought your furniture, too. But, I mean, one thing that they, we live in North Carolina, and of course there's been a lot of press over the last 15, 20 years, how much furniture manufacturing has gone offshore. And to a large degree, fancy wood furniture did and things like that. But upholstered furniture really predominantly never left because so many people want something that matches their interior. So it's actually a lot more cost effective to ship fabric from wherever and then make the furniture here. So that's one thing that didn't really go. But it was like shelving and bed stuff and so forth and so on. Mm-hmm. A lot of that went offshore, and unless you're going, higher end, a lot of that stuff still would be coming from offshore. But a lot of furniture is made here.
What about like mattresses? Are they typically made here in the States?
The majority of mattresses are going to be made regionally. In fact, like Sealy has a factory in Trinity where their U.S. headquarters is, and they just got bought last year by Tempur-Pedic. Tempur-Pedic mattresses are heavy. Mm-hmm. They're it's the memory foam stuff, right? Yep. Okay, so it's very heavy. So you would not want to ship something big like that a long distance, right? Well, and it doesn't cost a lot to make. Something with springs in it and coils, a lot more time consuming to make, so their margins pretty high in that area, and so they merged with Sealy to balance some options out for people, but also because of that. Well, but again, the majority of mattresses would be made here. However, the majority of the decorative part of the bed would not be.
Okay.
Like even on beds, like bed coverings. Okay.
Right.
So the mattress protector, which you would put on there for in case you spill something or this or that or whatever, that's probably, there's a lot of those are made here. I mean, probably 50% at least of the ones consumed at least are made here, and people wouldn't even know. They just go and buy them, those even at department stores. However, the sheets, the bedspreads, things of that nature, predominantly right now are offshore. You're going to start seeing some of that probably come back. Now, if you get into specialty products, like things for allergies and so forth, right here in Greensboro, you have a company called Precision Fabrics, and they make a line of sheets for people with skin issues and allergies and things like that. And
so a lot of the specialty items might be produced here or created here.
And they got into it accidentally. They made parachute fabric, and so they kind of they had people asking them, "Can you do this for us?" And but one of the things is that they mainly work in synthetics, polyester, nylon, things like that. One of the things you won't find a lot of production here in textiles is cotton, woven cotton, which is why you are not going to find a lot of sheets. You're not going to find. I mean, you can, and Google's a great resource, Bing too, but that is something that we kind of let go. Now knitted cottons, like you might find in a T-shirt or something like that, a lot of that stuff's still made here. It had to do with the volume that a company could produce efficiently versus who wanted to buy how much and so forth. So like you can buy a lot of clothes still that are made here. I mean, it doesn't seem like it, but there are. But like most.
Well,
go ahead.
Let me just ask you about the clothing. So let's say you are into designers and you really want to look your sharpest and your hottest when you go out, and you are you're really into that. So a lot of the designers are in Italy, France. So how are we ranked up against that? Not to sound I'm not necessarily that way, but I know people that are.
Right. They're actually, you'd be surprised how many American designers there are in your second tier, third tier fashion industry. Not the big names necessarily, but in clothing and in evening wear, gowns, things like that. There's actually quite a bit that's made in New York City, in Brooklyn.
Oh.
Even in Manhattan. Now the brands, I can't think of many of them right now, but some of them even that are fairly well known. There's going to be some of their high end stuff, but then you go to a department store to buy that brand, and frequently it wouldn't be, because a lot of times it's licensed from another company, so they will license the brand. And then they will actually go out and that company that licensed it will produce something wherever they want to produce it, and they just have to get the designs approved by the licensing company. But here's a men's clothing thing that's interesting, right? Okay, so there's a designer named Joseph Abboud, right? He became really well known in the 90s, and he ended up licensing his name to a company, and he worked with them at the time, though. But they actually bought the rights to it, and all of their suits are made in Massachusetts.
Oh, no kidding.
Their shirts aren't, but all their suits are and everything. But he left the company because he was bored with that, and he wanted to go and do something else. He can't use his own name.
No, they own his name.
They own his name. He actually was going to start another brand called Jazz by Joseph Abboud, and they sued him. They wouldn't let him do it. So,
jeez.
I mean, it's business. They paid him a lot of money, right, to have that name to be able to use it. So, I mean, you could argue it was a mistake on his part or whatever. And then he actually was going to buy, this kind of runs into another one, he was going to buy a factory that was in Massachusetts that made shirts, and he actually was going to start this Jazz line and work with them. That fell through, so that factory almost ended up closing. But gentleman that was a sales rep back with Hathaway years ago when I actually was involved in trying to save them, he actually acquired the company, and it's called New England Shirts now. And they make fantastic shirts. For years and years. That factory made shirts for lots of other companies. There's a brand called Rufus, which you can find at Nordstrom's and Neiman Marcus, and for years they made them. Now the Rufus, I think, are being made in Turkey or something like that. But they also the other brands that they would have made as Nordstrom had licensed, interestingly enough, a French brand, which escapes me right now, but they had this factory making all their shirts in North America.
So it's definitely going on. There's definitely clothing that's being made in the USA that are actually decent clothing as well. And so Christopher and I were talking before the show. We were like, well, when I think made in USA clothing, I kind of think, blah. I don't.
Like, okay,
right?
At work every day, I wear. This is sort of my thing. I wear a Hawaiian shirt. It's short sleeve. It's fun. I don't catch my sleeves on the shelves in the stock room.
Uh-huh.
I don't run a shoe store. That's my day job, right? So, and that's the thing. Every single one of my shirts is made in Hawaii. And that's just Hawaiian style, like a Tommy Bahama. They're made in China. Okay, my one I wear the most is Jam's World, and they've been making Hawaiian shirts since 1962 in Hawaii. Always have, always will. Most of their fabric. Most of the fabric is made for them from the same mill in Japan. They do get some fabric made here periodically, but predominantly that would be where they do it, and that's because they've been working with them. They can do fairly small runs, print, all these beautiful patterns, and then the majority of their stuff, though, are actually women's clothes, dresses, and they're beautiful, made out of rayon, light, silky feel. They're wonderful. They even make pillows and stuff now.
Cool.
But what their first product were surfer shorts. Okay, if you board shorts are real popular now, the real long shorts. Well, the idea is the North Pipeline in northern Oahu. It's you've seen the big waves, right? Well, that's over a coral reef. So if you have a spill, you can get some reef rash pretty bad. So they started wearing these longer shorts, and they called them jams because Surfline Hawaii made them, and that was the nickname. So Jam's World evolved out of that. But that's just. But there's so many things like that, and there tend to be smaller companies, and you don't find them at department stores.
So along those lines, let me just actually kind of stop you right there. So they're smaller companies. You're not really finding them in department stores. That kind of leads me to my next question. You are in the process of creating a new website called USAwares.com. And on this site, you are planning on explaining a lot of what we were talking about, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, as well as providing a source for customers or consumers to go to find where they can purchase USA-made products. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And it will be highly, highly refined over the next 6 months. There is a beta version of it out now if anybody wants to check it out. It is, instead of www.usawares.com, which is wares.com, it would be beta, beta.usawares.com, and because it is a beta version, but you can kind of get an idea where we're going. There's and anybody that ever wants to find something made in the USA and they can't find it, you can Google Made in the USA. It matters right now, which takes you to my blog page, and contact me. You can go to www.usawares.com, and it has my cell phone number on it. So you can call me or you can email me. So you email me and I'll find it for you if you can't.
That's cool.
Be Google or Bing or whatever. I mean, everything in my house. Actually, if you go to my Twitter page, which honestly I think it's just John Alley. I don't know. I'm going to do a Made in USA one, probably USAwares or whatever. But anyways, it actually has a picture of my living room, and the comment is the only things in here.
You dropped out on us. Are you still there, John? You still with us?
But it was my cable box made in Mexico, my DVD, which is made in Japan, and some lights of Christmas tree. My TV, everything else is made here.
Wait, is this the picture of your background on your Twitter? And your Twitter account is twitter.com/John Alley Jr. That's JOHNALLEYJR. John Alley Jr. And
that's right. So there's a one picture of me in front of the memorial at the World Trade Center, but my background picture is my living room. Correct.
Okay. The Christmas picture.
Correct. Took that when my mom was here. and that's actually a lot of the stuff under the Christmas tree was made here. That's why I made a point to use that.
Neat.
But yeah. So that's when it comes to gifts and holidays, I always make a point.
Which TV? It says everything in this picture is made in the USA, including the HD TV.
Correct, both of them.
But
the Toshiba, which I don't know if you can see it, which is
that's made in the USA. Toshiba.
Yeah, the Pioneer. Well, they were. They're not anymore.
Okay.
And Pioneer, I bought all the Pioneer TVs were made here, but they stopped making them about 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
If you can find a Pioneer Elite TV, it is amazing, and it was made in California.
So, in your opinion, what is the primary reason? I know the answer to this, but just I want to hear you say it. Primary reason for us here in the United States to purchase USA-made items.
But really, goes back to that realization I had in college. Okay, a country our size cannot sustain itself with a strong middle class without manufacturing, and the main reason for that is not that all those good jobs are in the actual manufacturing. It's all the jobs that support the manufacturing. Mm-hmm. Okay, for example. We're talking about electronics, and you're a techie, right?
Right.
Well, I'm sure you've probably read that Lenovo just opened a factory east of here in Guilford County, where they're now making laptops, ThinkPads, and by the end of the summer, they'll be making tablets there.
Oh,
okay?
I did not know that.
They were making servers there prior to that. It was sort of an assembly of servers sort of thing. They've been doing that for a few years. This mainly was a distribution warehouse, okay? Mm-hmm. So, but now they started the first of the year that they're making, not all of them, and that's the thing. You can't just go on their website and say, okay, I'm going to buy a ThinkPad, blah, 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 and it's made in America. Okay, they're not to that yet. But within the next year, they hope to have certain lines that will be the whole line will be being assembled there, and that would be technically an assembly process because you have so many components, right? Mm-hmm. And that gets into some complexities there. But this is where we get to this. Okay, so those people that are assembling, I think they have like 60, 80 people out there in that plant doing assembly. Okay, but all the people that are bringing the parts and supplies into the facility for assembly, the people shipping those out, the people in R&D and design, and in fact, Lenovo, when they bought PC division from IBM, it's actually a Chinese company, Lenovo. They bought it, and everybody's in an uproar. Oh no, it's terrible! But they actually kept dual headquarters. Their main design center for laptops is still in the Research Triangle. Has been. So Lenovo is a little different than most computer companies. They actually make almost everything that they sell, okay, versus contracting. So most of your laptops, for example, are going to be made by Quanta Computers or Foxconn, Hunhai, which is the one that makes most iPads and iPhones and so forth. They also make laptops for all the big brands, whether it be an American brand like HP or Compaq or something, or it could be Toshiba or Sony.
I'm curious. Now, Apple just announced, they just had their latest conference, and they were talking about made in California, Christopher, how was it phrased? Design in California.
Well, designed in California, assembled in the U.S., which they're actually assembling the Mac Pro in Texas. And actually a lot of the internals that are from Samsung, I believe those are somewhere in Texas too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Samsung's Korean, but they make a lot of chips in the Austin area. They have a huge facility. They make a lot of the chips that are used in the Apple iPhone and iPad too.
I'm not really big on the designed in California aspect of it. Like with Apple, to me it's kind of cheesy. I think that's I see where Google's doing the same thing with Motorola, where they just announced their Motorola X phone, and Yeah, and they copied Apple's slogan. They're like, "Oh, designed by you, assembled in the U.S." I mean, I'm not saying they copied that, but it's kind of similar to what Apple has been putting on the back of their iPhones for a while. But I think that the designed in California stuff is kind of cheesy. Like, who cares if it was designed in California? Like, I mean, I don't mean like they should just
But
put
it
like
does create a
USA
lot
or
of
whatever.
jobs. I mean, they are designing it here. A lot of companies, the design moved offshore when the production did. So
Yeah, but I mean, he's talking about
But I
what does it
understand.
matter what state it's
Yeah.
designed in? It's almost
thing.
Well, I mean, everybody knows it's designed in California because that's where Apple headquarters are. So, I mean, for them to like print that on the back of the phone, it's kind of tacky to me. But that's just my personal opinion. But I mean, I'm an Apple fanboy, and so Jennifer knows that. So yeah, whatever. But
Well, I understand your point, but their point is that they're for consistency. They're one, it's a statement of quality. Where because a lot of like HP. I mean, they're based in California, Palo Alto, whatever, but they don't. Most of their stuff's not designed there.
designed in North Dakota, designed in South Dakota. No, I'm kidding.
Or China or Asia or wherever. I mean, it's a Steve Jobs thing. He's proud of that. So I understand your point, though. But one thing is they do employ a lot of people that are paid very well in California because of the consistency of that. They've always kept all their design there.
Yeah.
do you think it's important, or do you think these companies are doing that to, like, just as a marketing aspect? I mean, because obviously it's going to be more expensive, right, for them to develop things or assemble things in the United States versus, I mean, other countries where, like, I mean, the minimum wage here, is going to be a lot higher, say, than it would be, like you said, Foxconn. I'm sure over there in China, like, the minimum wage is probably, not that, much compared to what we have over here. So, I mean, obviously it's going to cost more for Apple or, Motorola, Google, whoever to assemble things. I mean, so what is I mean, why would these companies focus on that?
I mean, some of it's marketing, but most of the companies wouldn't be doing it purely for that. And in fact, I'm actually talking to y'all on Skype on an iMac that was made in America. They actually, you basically have to put your hands on it, but they've been making iMacs all along out in California. Quanta Computing, which is a Taiwanese company, has a factory 10, 15 miles away from them where they've been making iMacs all along. They wouldn't want to argue it or make that point because it's a small percentage. It's like less than 10%. So if they said, well, we make iMacs here, then all of a sudden, they'd have this problem where everybody wanted the Made in America Mac or something. It's the same price.
Were you able to get yours made in America specifically?
Well, I waited until I saw one where I could recognize the box. I've been doing this so long, I can look at a box and 95% of the time I can tell you whether it was made here or China or in this region anyways. A lot of stuff made in Mexico or Canada would have a box that would be made here, so that hence it would have that look. But and also like the labeling, I could just look at the labeling and I could say, okay, that looks like it is. So I looked. I was actually in a Best Buy, and I looked over there because they stack their inventory up above, whereas Apple has it all nice and clean and it's back in a stock room. I remember going in there, the computer I'm using right now. I remember going in there probably 10 or 15 times. Said, "You guys got one back there made in USA? I'll buy it right now." And they'd look at me like, "What? You crazy?" They didn't even know. I mean, I like I said, I was at Best Buy, and they didn't have the size and everything I wanted. So I said, "Okay, if Best Buy's got them, they're out right now," because that's what happens. They produce them like once a year, and I think my theory is they won't confirm it or anything, but my theory is that they make them for government contracts, schools, and like that for the Buy American, right? And so they produce enough so that some of them do make it to the marketplace. And so I was absolutely right. I went in there, and while I was there buying this computer, there were other people buying them, and all of them coming out of the stockroom at that time were made in the USA, all the iMacs.
Interesting. I had no idea.
What year is your iMac?
It is, I will tell you what model it is. It is the
Because I have two in front of me. I have a new one.
It's like a year and a half or so. It's mid 2010, 27 inch.
That's
so
the same one I have. I have that one, and I have a new one that I just bought. Like I have the mid 2010 one.
Thinner back to it and everything.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a sweet computer. I'm gonna buy one once I can get myself a US made.
So how would I be able to tell if my iMac was made in
the little stand on the bottom will say where it's actually made, but just when you're buying it, just you look at the box. It'll say it's designed in California, assembled in the USA. And again, the issue is it's assembled, just like they say, assembled in China, which is an accurate statement. When you get into a high-tech product like a computer, you got parts from all over the place. So you're not ever going to have, I don't care where final assembly is, nothing's going to be made there in something like that. So, the number one producer for glass, for both the cover glass and the glass the plate that they put the electronics on is Corning.
Yes.
And they have a huge plant in Kentucky. Interestingly enough, it's producing a lot of volume now for Apple, even though they're sending them over to China. But they have a plant in Korea, Japan. They want to be close to where the actual displays are made because glass gets heavy, but it's also, no matter how strong Gorilla Glass is, shipping something that thin, could get broken pretty easy.
Is Corning in New York or Kentucky?
Well, there are plants in Kentucky.
Oh, okay. They're a New York company, though, right?
They're a New York company, correct.
Okay. Yeah.
But the plant that makes those glass substrates and the Gorilla Glass, which is a cover glass, protective glass, is in Kentucky, and it still exists because of military contracts. So in fact, footwear industry, a lot of stuff. A lot of these companies have done well because all these Desert Storm going back far enough, and then the stuff in Afghanistan and Iraq and all that. All those guys needed good boots and made in America, so you got a bunch of boot companies that have done real well because of that. That's one thing that's interesting. Is another thing related to military contracting that's fascinating is. You can now get high-end merino wool products that are made in the USA now because they found out that with IEDs that synthetic materials against the soldiers' bodies could melt to the skin.
No kidding.
Right? So they started making enough flash heat. So they started making these out of merino wool, the very inner layer. You still have synthetics on other things because they can offer certain kinds of protection, but against the skin, they were doing that because it doesn't melt, right? So they had a European company set up a processing plant in Georgia to process and clean the wool so that it can then be turned into yarn and in a fabric domestically. Like company Ibex out of Vermont has one of their piece called a shack, S-H-A-K, that's 100% American made, the yarn and all of that. Most of their stuff's assembled here with yarn and fabric from like New Zealand, but they're trying more and more to make more and more here. What's happening? Going back to that whole issue we were talking about sourcing and labor and all that with the Moto X and so forth. One of the issues is the cost of shipping, fast shipping, ordering volumes of stuff, knowing how much you're going to need of something, this or that. But energy cost is really becoming advantageous to manufacturing domestically because of shale gas. Our energy cost is substantially lower than any other industrialized country in the world right now. And see, shale gas it's natural gas, but it's not priced based on commodity markets like oil, petroleum is. Petroleum price is pretty much set by the global petroleum markets. Okay, so people invest, they invest in commodities markets, and you like oil, petroleum is $90 a barrel right now or something like that. Right? Okay, so that is what oil sells for, pretty much something in that area, which creates a whole nother conversation about domestic oil production because we're exporting it right now. But anyway, so back to the energy thing, right? So that's one factor. That compensates for a lot of cost. The other thing is China is getting a big middle class. So they're consuming more. Mm-hmm. They're making more. Your average Chinese wages are rising at somewhere approximately 15 to 20% a year.
No kidding.
Right?
Wow.
And here's another thing. They really love to buy made in the USA products.
Interesting.
Yes, it's a prestige thing. Also, like over here, a lot of people like to buy European stuff, right? Oh, right. It's better. It's made in America, made in Europe, made in Germany, right? Most of our ancestors probably came from there. So there's sort of this, the old country.
It's funny. It's
right?
true. It's true. Yeah.
They made most of their money because we bought products from them and we financed them, and our companies built factories over there. There's actually a respect for that because of that. So it's actually like Allen Edmonds Corporation, which makes men's shoes. Then the majority of them are made in Wisconsin. They do have a small plant for like less expensive shoes, like weekend shoes in Dominican Republic, and they make a few styles in Italy for that kind of construction, which they aren't set up to do in as low volume. But the majority of their shoes are made there. Their biggest export market is Germany, right? And they have a German website. They make shoes just for European market and everything.
No kidding. Wow.
A lot of the leathers might come from, some of the leathers come from here, but a lot of their sole leathers come from Germany, and some of their uppers come from Italy or what have you, but Germany is a huge market for them. China, next year, they have a company in China that is partnering with them to open upwards, I don't remember the number, but within the next few years, something like 15 to 20 shoe stores selling only their American-made product.
Something. I never thought, I just always think, oh, well, made in Italy, made in Germany, made in France. I never thought that other countries would actually have an interest in USA created items. That's fascinating.
I'm in my shoe store a year and a half ago. Guy walks in. He wants to buy an American-made boot. He's from Israel. He's the CFO of a company in Israel that makes non-woven fabrics in Reedsville, north of here, for like handy wipes and stuff, and all kinds of things. All these, like, what a handy wipe. That kind of fabric is used in all kinds of things. They don't even have a plant in Israel. This is their main plant. So he's over visiting, and he wants to get American-made boots. And so I sold him one of our work boots, Thorogood, and he was shocked. It was under $200, and he was just thrilled. That's 'cause that factory actually makes their own product, so they're not contracting with somebody, which adds another layer of cost into it. However, in electronics, sometimes the like Flextronics, which is going to make the Moto X and probably going to make the new Apple Desktop Pro, whatever it's called,
Mac Pro, the
new black monolith thing there. It's pretty cool looking. But that again. I think they haven't been absolutely specific, but a lot of people are thinking it's the same plant, which is Flextronics, which is headquartered in Singapore, but their main office is in California. It's kind of weird too, but it is a global economy. It's a global country, and thing with me is I'm not anti-import. You'll get a lot of people that are all about made in USA, and it's like, oh, it should only be this or that. For myself, that. Go out of my way to buy everything I can made here. If I don't need it and it's not made here, I'm not going to buy it. But sometimes, you just don't have a choice, so you do what you can do. But
what's the difference between made in the USA and assembled in the USA?
Excellent question. Okay. From the determination by the FTC, which is really sort of what regulates that, it can get very technical and specific. But for something to be just simply labeled made in the USA, it roughly needs to have somewhere around 70 to 80% of its content parts made here. And then the way the wording is very legalese, but it has to do with amount of the value of the work that's done here makes it so sufficiently, most or all of the conversion and the parts are done here. If you're going to simply put made in the USA, it's a stronger standard than like anything else anywhere in the world. It's almost to the point of could discourage somebody from actually making things here. Like everybody knows mag lights, right? Mag light flashlights, right? Okay, they've always been made here. Guy's a immigrant from Europe. He's in his 70s now. His last name is actually Mag something or other. I can't remember what it is. That's where that comes from, the mag part. But the issue is in making them, he hasn't always been able to get particularly the lighting element, the flashlight, the bulb itself. So he actually got in trouble for putting made in the USA. I don't remember the whole deal, about 15 years ago. So he got away from saying that on his packaging, and then they went to a USA manufacturer on the top of the package. Now they've gotten a little bit more specific. It says that the flashlight itself is machined and assembled here in the USA with some imported parts and accessories are made here. Now that's absurd, really. I mean, like on one of the he always uses Duracell batteries, which are always made here. The aluminum's made here. That we're talking about maybe a spring that holds the battery in place, and even on their LEDs, most all of them are made by a company called Cree down in Durham, North Carolina. Probably makes the best quality single element LEDs, like an actual little device that creates the light. And so, I mean, the flashlights are really, in fact, they do meet that 90% sort of spec.
Right.
Because he got in trouble years ago,
you can't use that.
He's not using it by choice at this point.
Yeah.
But he's just like, okay, I'm just going to say what is made here on the bottom of my package. You know how much this thing is actually made here. He's very specific. And I just saw there's a company, I don't know if either one of y'all like wine or not, but there's a company out in California that developed a wine aerator. And you pour the wine through it, and it introduces air into the wine as it would be if you were to put it in a glass decanter. Right, so basically it decants the wine as you pour it. Well, when they start out, it said "Made in USA" right on the package. Well, then they found out that not all of it was made here, and the package wasn't made here, and this and this. And then they also ran into a problem. The ones producing the parts they had made here couldn't produce the volume that they needed as they exploded. It became the hottest thing in the industry. And so they started getting some made over there, but then people were complaining. So now they've tried to bring it all back here. But the last one I bought, the package, it actually says body, base, and filter, screen, blah, 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 made in the USA. Ring and packaging made in China, assembled in USA. So it gets kind of absurd. But really where this started was New Balance had an issue with this, and the FTC was working with them in the 80s to determine what is the made in the USA, because they were the only ones making athletic footwear outside of Asia in any kind of volume. So the problem they would run into is they couldn't always get the parts made here. So, and the FTC was on board with it. They're going to say, okay, 50% of the components, and you do all the real assembly here, you should be able to label that. And then it got into, Congress got involved because Hand Tool Manufacturers Association of America was all up in arms about Stanley Tools putting Made in USA on their cutting little box cutters and their tape measure and all this. And they're saying, because they're really just assembling them here, Okay, so this is where this comes up. And then they get talking, and everybody gets all hyped up about, what's not really made here? You shouldn't be able to put Made in the USA on something, with all these imported parts.
I see.
Unfortunately, there was enough political pressure for them to kind of back off and make it very complicated. And that's fine on a you go get yourself a channel lock plier made in Meadville, PA. It's got little rubber handles and it's a piece of steel. It's got 3 or 4 parts. So you can make that here, but you go to my iMac, that's all but impossible. So the standard's out of whack. Like
that makes sense. Yeah.
A Swiss-made watch, a watch that says Swiss-made. Okay? All it has to have is the movement has to be made in Switzerland, the face and the hands, it has to be assembled there. Right? So like a Swatch watch. Well, how can you have a Swatch watch Swiss-made for $100 or something? That's why. It doesn't have to meet that same standard. You can buy a watch that says made in Italy. You could have a Swiss movement, and it could be assembled there. But to say made in the USA on a watch here, there's a company in Pennsylvania called RGM Watches. They have some watches where they make almost the entire movement here, right? But there's a little piece called the hairspring, which is key to a hand-wound watch, which comes from Switzerland still, and a couple other parts come from Germany. So they can't put on the face of it USA made or made in USA. They can put, Pennsylvania, USA on it, and they can even put USA on the movement because that's inside of it. But they can't actually put made in USA. Another company, Cobalt, it's in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
This is a similar deal. This is started by a German guy who was going to school at Carnegie Mellon there, and as a project, he decided he could sell custom watches online or something. It evolved into making watches, and they have watches where the entire case, including the crystal sapphire cover, is made here. The movement is rebuilt here with a lot of USA parts, but again, he can't put made in USA on there. He has to put Pittsburgh, USA, and he can describe and say the entire case is machined and made and assembled here, but he has to say assembled on the watch. So it's really a complicated thing for a lot of little companies.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Another good example of that scenario is in pocket tools, Leatherman tools. Every Leatherman tool ever made or sold was predominantly made in Oregon. The guy's name is Leatherman. That's actually his last name, Tim Leatherman. It sounds like it has something to do with working with leather, but it's actually his name. But from the beginning, he was actually in traveling in Europe, and I think it had to do with a Swiss Army knife, but it really wasn't rugged enough or something. He's like, there can be a better version of this. So he came back and he cobbled something together, and it's like everybody's like, that's really cool. So he started making them. And the only major part that's ever not really been made here was the files, which were made in Switzerland.
Right.
And he ran into the same problem. One of his competitors turned him into the FTC and this and that, and he spent a bunch of money on the lawsuit. So now products that are sold here say Oregon Proud on the back, and they will, if they have a part that is imported, like a leather case made in Mexico or something, or some parts made in China, they'll say that. But the tool itself, which is made here, they don't say that. But if you were to buy the same product in Europe, it says made in USA. It would
say that, yeah.
It says made in USA.
Isn't that interesting? That's
So what about the New Balance, like the New Balance 990s? The back of those say handmade in the United States.
Okay,
like so.
That shoe actually is about as close to 100% made in USA you're going to get on almost any piece of footwear anywhere.
Do you have those, Christopher?
I do.
Yeah, that's what I wear. That's what actually Steve Jobs wore the 991s. But now I guess the most famous person to wear the 990s would be Barack Obama. Anytime you see Barack wearing tennis shoes, he always has.
Now he is. When he first came into office, he was not aware of that. Good for him. Yeah. He was wearing imported. He was wearing imported athletic shoes then. Yes, Nikes. Yeah. But anyways, yes, that's correct. And the 990, that's an interesting little bit there too. That was one of the shoes that brought this up. The number 990 came from 1982, 83 when they introduced the original. It was $99. It was the first running shoe, athletic shoe, to sell retail for $100, and that was that originally. That's where the numbering system came for New Balance. Well, not originally. When Jim Davis bought them, that's not how they were doing it. But that sort of evolved into something from the 70s into the early 80s. It's obviously changed since then.
What's the cost now?
The suggested retail is $164.99. You can usually find it for a little less.
Yeah, I paid $150 for mine, I don't remember when they came out a few months ago, because they did away with the $990 ones. Those were the ones that I used to wear, and they quit making them, and then like the $990s were the only ones you could buy.
The $991 was because they made such significant changes to the original $990 that they wanted to make a statement of how different it was. It was really the first really modern high tech shoe they did, where it wasn't just a wedge of EVA foam with a sole glued onto it. If you remember, it had the little like foam, like enclosed little deal in the heel and all that, and that was a phenomenal shoe. It evolved over the years. They were making, they'd only change it every 3 to 5 years or whatever, and that's why they can get so many of the parts made here, because they produce it in such volume. But the 992, actually, they put some gel material in it, and it was kind of heavy, and it wasn't as cushy. So they actually changed that over pretty quick to the 993. The reason that they've gone back to 990, it's actually called the 990 V3, as in version 3, and it is they put a lot into it. It's really a statement shoe again. It's a very lightweight shoe compared to the older ones. It's still somewhat stable. It's got a little carbon fiber in the midsole for stability in the midsole. It uses a polyurethane foam in the heel area, so it's a little more durable and less prone to compression set, which is why an old athletic shoe still looks okay a lot of times, but you just feel the guts are gone. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the deal on that. Now I'm actually wearing today the 2040, which is their top of line shoe. It retails for $275.
Whoa!
It actually has I'm talking about carbon fiber. It has a carbon fiber cradle that your foot sits in, so it's phenomenal for stability. It's a really an impressive piece, and they actually have a new model called the 2040 V2 coming out next year. That's going to be all leather, and it has wax shoelaces. It's really technically still a running shoe, but no one's going to wear it for that. It's going to be a high-end comfort casual shoe. It's going to sell for $350, I believe.
Wow!
And those ones don't say handmade in the USA, do they?
Well, yeah, I think they do.
I'm not. Say it on the back.
I haven't actually seen that one. It actually says.
I meant the 2040. Those don't say handmade in the USA, right? On the back.
No, they do not. No, it's got hand stitching. If you actually, the interesting thing about it though, is if you look inside the tongue, it says handmade in the United States.
Oh, okay.
And established 1906, which is the year the company was founded, by an English immigrant who got tired of his feet hurting all the time. Mm-hmm. So he decided to do something about it, and he came up with an arch support system based on research he had done in the library and watching chickens and how their feet work. He created a device for himself, and it worked so good. He said, "The heck with this service industry stuff. I'm going to make my own. I'm going to start my own company." And he called it the New Balance Arch Support Company.
When was this?
This is 1906.
Wow, it's been around since that long back.
Yep, they didn't start making shoes till the 20s.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an old company like LL Bean's been around for a while too. It's like 19.
Yeah, and while the majority of LL Bean products are not made here, they're making a little bit of a push to bring some back. In fact, they have some shirts made by New England Shirt Company I was mentioning earlier. Right. They're starting to carry now. And they still make themselves their little duck boots and all the derivations of those they still make up.
Oh, yeah.
Their little tagline is "Made in the USA from fabrics around the globe," because I live about 5 miles from the little LL Bean outlet mall in New Hampshire.
See?
So,
you said New Hampshire or Maine? Freeport?
Yeah, well, they have a huge outlet mall in New Hampshire, which is it's not in.
I was up in Freeport for a couple months when we were trying to save the Hathaway Dress Shirt Company. That was fascinating. That factory was amazing. It was bad timing. It was so state of the art. They could make, check this out about this factory. And this is something also about, this goes back again to the whole idea of Moto X and can we be competitive making stuff here. A lot of it has to do with technology. See, that factory, and this is 2002, but the factory where Hathaway was in Waterville, Maine, they could produce a men's dress shirt, okay, using a 60-40 blend of fabric that at that time was made in North Virginia or North Carolina. Can't remember. It was one of the two. But and that, unfortunately, that company was bought out by an Indian company. They moved all the equipment to India. But anyways, the fabric costs, a swatch of the fabric to make the shirt, the cost was about $6, I think, right? And then the assembly would bring the cost of this shirt up to where they could wholesale it for around $15. This is a men's dress shirt, button-down dress shirt, collar, all that stuff, because they had so many pieces of automation. Now, if you wanted to put really fancy patterns, you know, where you're going to put the pocket or something, then you would take a little longer. You'd have to do a little more manual stuff on some cutting and everything. Now using laser systems, they could actually have it identify these patterns and do it better. But what was fascinating is they had a contract with Walmart to make a shirt. And it just was a couple compromises from their signature Hathaway shirt. It from a distance, it looked exactly the same. And Walmart was selling it. They were actually making it. Walmart was selling this shirt across the country under the George brand for, I believe it was $22. And then they had another brand which they only sold regionally, made the same plant with cheaper fabric from like Thailand or something. It was some pretty cheap fabric. And that was retailing for $17, made in America. But that had to do, again, with smart automation. Right? They actually were actually working to make it even more productive and all this when we were trying to take it over, but we couldn't get bridge financing from the banks because we had a verbal sort of agreement with the people that had it, but we couldn't get real contracts because we didn't actually have any ownership and anything. It was a real mess. But and ironically, a less sophisticated factory that existed in Canada, they had actually basically given that factory to the Canadian government because it was going to be shut down. Canadian government kept it going, and that factory actually still makes shirts today. So,
wow.
Yeah. Not as sophisticated. They make higher-end shirts. Canada, another interesting apparel thing related to some of this stuff. NAFTA was really hard on men's fine clothing because when it created a loophole where a fabric that would have a 20 to 40% tariff coming in here from Europe, which was set up to help companies like Burlington Industries and Cone Mills, all these big companies, to compete in worsted wools and so forth, which they never really did, but those tariffs were there. So a company that would assemble the suit here would be paying these extra tariffs on the fabrics, whereas if that fabric was sent to Canada, I think they had a 5 to 10% tariff on the same fabric up there. They could assemble it into a finished piece of clothing and said made in Canada, ship it down here on NAFTA, and completely avoid all that. So there's so much complexity in all this stuff, and that's one of the things I'd like to kind of eventually cover some of that on the website. Who knows? Since it is, I can only do it part time. Can only do so much. But I want to, before we go on that, before I forget, there's a group called the Boston Consulting Group. And they have some really good articles about what's become known as reshoring instead of offshoring.
Oh, okay.
And if anybody wants to just go into Google and type in Boston Consulting Group or BCG, Made in USA, you'll come up with a bunch of neat articles you can read from them. And there's another organization to help small to medium-sized manufacturers figure out some of this stuff we've been talking about and be globally competitive, called the MEP. That's the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Division of the NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technologies. They're the ones that run the atomic clock.
Right.
They do the Malcolm Baldrige Quality Awards, all that. And there's offices in every state, usually affiliated with a university, that anybody can go to get resources on that.
Would you be able to send me the links so that way I can put those links to those resources in the show notes?
Sure. When we're done, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
For you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Well, you are just a wealth of knowledge. I mean, you're like a made in the USA encyclopedia. How do you remember everything? I can't remember, what I had for breakfast. So
that's why I can't tell you stats. My brain's clouded with all this other stuff. You should stats. I can't remember people's names, their phone numbers, stats. Thank goodness that's all stored in digital devices these days.
I know, right? Forget phone numbers when it comes to that. I don't even recall any of them anymore. They're all on my device, so I understand.
I think I know 10 phone numbers in my head, maybe, and most of them are old.
Yeah, I remember the ones from when I was a kid.
Yeah, right. My dad has he has one of his phone numbers is actually the same thing. It's like 20-something years old or something. Mm-hmm. But that's pretty funny.
It sticks in your head.
As far as the Twitter thing, since you told everybody about my Twitter account, if you want to do that, just anybody that would follow me when I do get my USAwares Twitter account, and when the website's up fully running, I'll send out a tweet regarding that. So,
so it's just USAwares, like US, or USAware, like being aware?
My web developers, they said, you need something catchy and short. I wanted Made in the USA It Matters. Mm-hmm. And I actually own the rights to madeintheusaitmatters.com and .net or something like that. Yeah. And we'll probably have some forwarding link or something. But it's kind of too long, but at the same time, it's not really catchy. That's like a tagline. So if you go to USAwares, mm-hmm. This is how they're pronouncing it, is USAwares. I could sell something on it someday. But that was sort of their idea, USAwares. And so it's spelled USAwares. Mm-hmm. If you go there, underneath it, the tagline is "Made in the USA It Matters." Yep,
I see that. Yeah.
So,
well, it is a catchy name, USAware or USAware.
Hey, I gotta give them credit. And I'm responsible for content, but they're responsible for the look, and I think they've done a great job so far on the look.
They have. I'm looking forward to when it's fully up and running in a few months.
Now, in the meantime, if you go and you click on the blog link. Mm-hmm. It takes you to my blog, which you can also find by Googling "Made in the USA It Matters."
Okay.
So I'm all about all these other Made in USA sites out there. I think they're all great. We're all on the same team, the way I look at it. So at some point, I'm actually want to have a place you can go on the site for other Made in USA sites, and there's a place for companies if they want to be listed on there. They can sign up. For the indefinite future, there's going to be free listings and all that at some point. Nice. In time. I may have to start charging something just to filter stuff out.
Eventually, yeah.
Advertising at some point, maybe it'll sustain itself.
Well, I definitely keep us posted in when the site goes completely live. And, the time being, people can go to the beta site, beta.usawares.com, and get a hold of you through the site as well as on your Twitter account. And I'm looking forward to seeing it in its entirety, but it looks beautiful right now. So good job to your developer.
Honestly, right now, for this point, if someone really wants to communicate with me the easiest without calling me, this is going to sound crazy, but my old email account, which I've had forever, is really the one I check the most. It's my first name, John-Edward, so that's JOHN-EDWARD at mindspring.com, mindspring.com.
All right. Would you like me to list that in the show notes for you?
That would be great. The info at USAwares actually forwards to that. So.
Okay, great. Excellent. And so we know where to find you online. John, thank you for joining us today, and just right in time for the 4th of July. I'm really excited, and I'll be definitely looking more and being more aware of USA products and trying to make that effort to purchase more USA made items.
If we got 10, 15 more seconds, I do want to
Sure.
make a point. One, you can find almost anything that you need or want made here. Sometimes it's more, but a lot of times it's the same price or less. But Walmart is making a real push to bring stuff back here. Many people remember the 80s. They were a big Made in USA thing and what have you. They announced earlier this spring that they're going to spend $50 billion. That's billion dollars over the next 10 years helping bring stuff back that's gone offshore. Some might blame them, what have you. We could talk about that forever. But also things that are being made here, but on a small scale. They're going to help companies ramp up. Like they are now have a made here brand, and they're making. You can go into most Walmarts, you can buy them online. Wonderful towels made in the USA. They're made in Georgia by 1888 mills.
Nice.
And they're wonderful. They're made with Supima cotton grown in the southwestern USA, which is the finest cotton in the world. You can read, actually, they export most of it to Japan to make kimono robes and stuff with. It's the best cotton in the world. People talk about Egyptian cotton. It's great cotton, but a lot of it is how it's processed. It results in it. So anyway.
That's good to know about Walmart.
I wanted to get the Walmart thing in because it's gonna be really huge. Love it. That's fantastic. There's so much good stuff happening. The Moto X phone, first smartphone made here, and I'm guessing somewhere in the next year to 2 years you'll start being able to buy iPhones and iPads made here. They're already making them in Brazil because the Brazilian government said if you want to sell them here, you're gonna have to make them here.
That's clever.
But it makes a point that you can make them here. One of the issues is suppliers. They don't have a lot of suppliers there. So, and that comes back to it. But I know we got to finish it up. But I mean, anything from watches to things, hair dryers to whatever it is, combs, brushes, shoes, clothing, I can help you find it made here.
And I guess by purchasing that way, it's almost like making a vote, saying, hey, we want more businesses to be working here in the United States. We want to purchase our items here in the United States. So it's definitely... Yep, it's voting. That's what I call it. Well, thank you, and Christopher, thank you for coming to the show and being with us. I'm just so happy that you are now a permanent co-host on the show.
I'm glad to be here, and I learned a lot today. I didn't realize so much. So many products were actually either distributed or assembled or created here, especially like the clothing stuff. That's crazy. Like I don't know. I guess honestly, I just never think about that stuff like when I shop, but it's good to know, and I'm glad that we have this industry to help our economy and whatnot, and I guess I'll be more aware of it now that I've had this little discussion because it's a lot to think about. And my gosh, you are like an encyclopedia though.
I'll do it and make it easy on your clothing one. Okay, there's a company called American Apparel out of California.
I know what it is.
Every single piece of clothing they sell, they make in California. And they make most of the fabric, too. Started by a Canadian and a Mexican immigrant. How about that one for you? We could do a whole half hour just on that. But fascinating stuff.
Funny.
All right, guys.
All right.
Maybe we could do this again sometime.
Oh, that'd be great to have you back on. And whenever your site is fully up, just let us know and we'll have you back on. So,
Chris, you were great. Sorry I didn't let you talk more. You asked some really good questions.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just listening, and I was like a sponge over here, absorbing it all in.
Me too. As was I. So, right. Well, happy 4th of July, everyone.
Maybe I'll put something together and a list of some companies, teasers you can forward to people, too, or connect to it.
That would be great if you could do that, and I'll put it in the post tonight. So
I'll do that for you.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. Happy 4th.
Happy 4th. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Get Nerdy With It. Join us each week as we interview nerds talking about their passions.
Oh, nerds.
And be sure to visit us at getnerdywithit.com.